is the college football playoff working? Because we have this system now, and it's expanded to 12 teams because we were trying to avoid the Florida State problem, and I think it's created more problems than it's solved. I've said from the beginning of this thing that I don't believe that the college football playoff with humans making the decision solely on their own is going to ever work to satisfy people. I just don't think that's the way that our society is set up. We all like to whine and complain about things, and trust me, we do. You look at social media last night. You look at the reaction to the college football playoff week 3 polls. Everybody's upset. It's shocking to me that BYU is ranked behind SMU, who they beat. It is shocking to me that Indiana is where they are, that Penn State is where they are. I don't believe that the college football playoff, even with this new slate of selectors, there's a lot of new faces on the selection committee this year. I don't believe that this is the system that is going to be some kind of savior or finally deliver college football and its fans the postseason that it deserves. Frankly, Jake, I think that this week they created more controversy certainly than any problems that they solved.
Certainly, and I think that that's sort of the genius and the issue with this setup. I mean, the whole point of the college football playoff is to create an entertaining product that, makes a lot of money and helps push the sport forward on the football field. And, we're certainly getting that. We're certainly getting the drama, the questions, the wondering about how, again, BYU and SMU, or, a lot of people were upset that, Bama jumped ahead of Miami. And there was a lot of that reaction that came out in this latest ranking. And, I think the system, it has its flaws, just like anything else. But I do think overall it works. I think we have a general understanding of what you need to be in order to get into the college football playoff. You got to be 2 losses or less, depending on what conference you play in. You have to have quality wins on your resume, and you can't lose in November. And, outside of that, if you win your conference, you're in. So I think the formula is pretty straightforward, but I think college football fandom runs so hot that people can't logically look at this thing and say, yeah, it makes sense here or there or whatever. Like we as fans are unable to do that. So I think the system works pretty well. I do think a Super League NFL model would be the most ideal, most perfect system, because then there is no human being making a decision. It's, hey, you either won or lost the game, and that's going to decide your fate. So I think that's why we inevitably get to that. But I think as far as what we have now, I'm not sure that we could ask for much better, because I think the 4-team playoff was just too limiting. I think we all wanted more teams. We all wanted a bigger conversation. And so I think the 12-team playoff does that, but I'm definitely not in favor of 16 teams or anything like that. I think 12 is absolutely the max that we should stay at.
Yeah, and I think you look at the bracket coming into, the weekend. And I think it's really interesting that when you see the bracket and you have, it's absolutely disgusting to me that Boise State is 4th there. This is the problem that we're going to have. If Colorado wins the Big 12 championship, which I think is likely, which I think is very likely, how can you put Boise State ahead of Colorado? I don't see any way that's possible. It is ridiculous to me that when you look at Boise having played nobody, they do not have a quality win on their schedule. And we've talked about this ad nauseum. This is going to be the argument. How do you have BYU behind SMU, who BYU has beaten? And SMU does not have a quality win and is in the worst football conference in the Power 4. Yet SMU is ranked ahead of BYU, who has 1 loss, and it was this week. And they have multiple quality wins. These are the things that when you look at this and you look at Texas, Miami, and Oregon, do either of those three more deserving than whoever wins the Big 12 championship of having a bye? Is Boise State on any level more deserving than anyone who wins the Big 12 championship? Whether that be Arizona State, whether that be Colorado, BYU, are any of those teams less deserving than Boise State?
Man, it's hard to say that they're less deserving, man.
It's ridiculous to me that a team in Boise State And this is the hard thing that you can't get away from. I love Ashton Ginty. I think he's probably going to come second in the Heisman Trophy. But if I look at who Boise State has played, you have to ask yourself, where's the common sense in having Boise State, whose best game on their schedule is a loss at Oregon? And what is their best win? They don't have a best win. Their wins are Georgia Southern, Portland State, Washington State, Utah State, Hawaii, UNLV, San Diego State, Nevada, and San Jose State. How somebody explain to me how Boise State is ranked in a position where they get a first round bye over anybody in the Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's hard to understand. I mean, I think, the thing you really have to talk about is is the makeup of the committee. I mean, the like you said, I mean, the committee's got a lot of new faces. I think there's a lot of it's rather unpredictable what they're going to do, and I think logic says that Boise State shouldn't be ahead of a Big 12 champion, but clearly that's not how the committee views what Boise State has done. Clearly, the committee views Boise State as a team that would handle Big 12 competition or would handle ACC competition. And so to me, that's what's difficult, is I just don't know how you get to that. I don't understand the equation or the factors that go into somebody coming to the conclusion that Boise State would or should be ranked higher in the bracket than a Big 12 champion. I understand, BYU loses, that they got to drop. We all understand that. The only question was, how far were they going to drop? And I still think them dropping, I think, what was it, 7 spots or 6 spots or whatever, that's still pretty aggressive. I mean, it's your first loss of the year. It wasn't a good loss, but it still is your first loss. So I don't know, man. This is why I say, like, part of me feels like, hey, this is why the system works, because we're all going to sit here all day, every day, until we get our final, set in stone bracket going into the playoff about who should be where and what works best. That's why this works. But ultimately, it also doesn't work if we're going to have Boise State, the best Group of 5 team, ahead of the Big 12 champion. Because I don't believe for a second that Boise State would beat BYU, or certainly would beat Colorado. There is no way you're beating Colorado. So that is the hard part. And then, if you look out east, again, we have this classic scenario where Miami's on idle bye week, and they haven't lost, and Alabama won their game and jumped them. And that's the other thing that people were pissed about.
I look at this, I don't understand what this committee's looking at. I truly do not. And usually, like, listen, the rankings are what they are, but you can't have BYU behind SMU and Boise State. I mean, that, for all intent and purposes, SMU has no resume. That this is, and I ask every week on this show when these rankings come out, and the AP poll as well, I ask every week on this show, what are you looking at? And if I just read you Boise's resume.
Yeah.
So what on Boise's resume puts Boise ahead of anybody in the Big 12? What is it? If I look at SMU's resume in the worst football conference in the country, I don't think it's close. Their loss is to BYU, but you still rank them ahead of BYU. Their wins are Nevada, Houston Christian, really, TCU, Florida State, Louisville, Stanford, Duke, a fraudulent Pitt team, and Boston College. That's the entirety of. They don't have a quality win.
So what the committee is saying is, they looked at this, and they clearly somewhere in that schedule said, hey, there's a quality win somewhere. Like, I don't understand. I don't know what else it would be, right? I mean, because again, obviously, like we always say, this is a bunch of people sitting around the table, eating some pizza, putting the ranking together, right? That's essentially all this is. So you look at that and you're like, well, hey, their one loss is BYU, But was Louisville a quality win? Like, is that how we're categorizing Louisville at that point then? Or is the committee saying that, and this is kind of what I was saying about Ohio State or Indiana or any of these other teams that we were talking about yesterday, is like, how does the committee view the win earlier in the season based on where that team is now? So like with A&M, are they saying, hey, well, Notre Dame's A&M win at that time was a hell of a win? Right? A&M was this great team. They were highly ranked. Like, that was a hell of a win. They went on the road to College Station. We get it. But now it seems like that role is kind of reversed because they're not using that same logic, let's say, with SMU and BYU. So that's the hard part, is it's both a great thing that we can sit here and talk about this, ad nauseum. But at the same time, I agree. I don't know how you have SMU ahead of BYU.
And I think what these rankings very clearly tell you is that the committee has zero respect for Kansas. And BYU fan, you're going to hate it, but it's what I've said all year. You don't have a reputation. You don't have a track record. So when you lose to Kansas and you lose to Kansas in November, they're going to heavily penalize you
at home.
It's a bad loss. And when I look at SMU, Pitt sucks. Let's just be honest. Pitt is not a good football team. I've said all year long, and I think most people disagreed with me. Pitt is not a good football team. They're just, and
you're not that guy.
SMU is beating them by 20 points.
Yeah.
So again, I say Colorado. Like, where's Colorado on this graphic? 16th. Colorado is 16th on this graphic. You want to talk about disrespect? Unless somehow, and Boise's not going to lose because, again, they don't play anybody. But unless Boise finds a way to lose a game, I think now it is going to be very difficult for Boise not to be that fourth highest ranked conference champion. And I think it is absolutely a tragic decision to have them ranked as high as they are ranked. At some point, this is what I've said about Notre Dame all year. Notre Dame doesn't belong. Are you out of your goddamn mind?
Yeah.
When you look at Notre Dame that you think they're the sixth best team in the country, they are not.
Well, I think Tennessee, when you look at this grouping of teams, Tennessee is the one that I feel like is sort of the linchpin in the momentum downhill as you lose. So Tennessee is this 2-loss team now where you've just lost to Georgia, and
your other loss is Arkansas.
Yeah, to me, the Georgia loss wasn't really a good loss. I mean, they dominated you. And
you got your ass beat.
Yeah. So to me, what I'm struggling with is I understand, like in the SEC, because you have to say that. In the SEC, the standard's different. So I understand why Bama got put ahead of Miami. The committee's clearly saying, hey, we believe that Bama's a better team than Miami. Resume, SEC, like they've been here before. We get it. Okay, cool. I'm good with that. But what I don't understand about where Tennessee is sitting is Tennessee's a 2-loss SEC team who's going the wrong direction. Yet Colorado, and some of these other teams are going the right direction, albeit at 2 losses, but they're still ranked well below. So my question is, let's say that, and Tennessee's not going to lose to UTEP, right?
No.
But let's say that, we have a 3-loss SEC team here in the next 2 weeks. You should be knocked out of the playoff rankings at that point. I should not see you on the graph at 3 losses, even if you're an SEC team.
And you look at this graphic, and again, how do you not look at Georgia and completely understand what, like, everybody questioning how Georgia is where they are when they lost to Ole Miss 2 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
It's Ole Miss. And I say it every week on this show, you don't have to like the SEC, but they take their respect. You don't have to give it to them. They're taking it from you.
Yeah.
Because you look at Georgia's schedule, their losses are to Alabama, who was, I think, 4th in the country at that point, and a 16th ranked Ole Miss team. Their wins are over a dominating win over Texas, who was number 1 in the country at the time.
Huge win.
A dominating win over a 7th ranked Tennessee team. And they've, in my opinion, done more than they needed to do to get into the college football playoff. And then you look at the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And I know everybody lost their mind on Joey Galloway last night. And I know everybody thinks that I took a lot of heat in the comments section over Lane Kiffin yesterday. Tell me that either one of those dudes is wrong. If you are Indiana and you lose to Ohio State, you are still going to be in the college football playoff.
Which is just asinine.
That's what this bullshit right here, excuse my French, that's what this nonsense right here tells me.
Yeah.
The SEC and the Big Ten are getting in. The Big 12 and the ACC are going to have to beg, borrow, and steal.
Yeah.
That's what this tells you. It's the only thing that you're getting out of these rankings, because when I look at Notre Dame, remember everybody yesterday, oh, Notre Dame shouldn't be there. Well, guess what? They're 6th.
Yeah.
Having beaten who?
But
Having
again,
beaten who?
What's their ace in the hole?
They have a ton of people that watch their games.
So that's why they're in.
They have legacy, and
it's Notre Dame.
It's Notre Dame.
Say.
And I'm a Notre Dame fan saying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not, I'm telling you now, they're not close to the 6th best team in the country.
It doesn't even bother me that the SEC and the Big Ten get preferential treatment. They get that edge. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
They've earned that. Like I'm not bothered by that. But I think that the committee, in my opinion, has got to be really careful about how far you take that, because again, it doesn't, and this is, I'm famous on the show for saying you don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to say, well, Indiana's 10-0, they're 5th in the country. Man, amazing. Kirk Cignetti, Google me, everything's awesome. But then if you go and get your ass beat at the shoe and you lose by 25, you should be out of the playoff rankings. You haven't played anybody. You lost to the best team you've played. But that's not going to happen, as you just pointed out, right? Like if they lose that game by, as I've said, if you lose by 3 points, or I think the most you can lose it by and still be respected is 10 points. If you lose by 10 points and you get to that margin in garbage time, I think people will respect that loss and say, you know what, Indiana, hell of a year. You played the big boys. Totally get it, bro. We're still going to put you in, but you're going to be a lower seed.
And again, why is this happening to the Big 12? Because you're not going to fire Dave Aranda. That's why this is happening. This league is so comfortable with mediocrity. Beating Oklahoma State is not a triumph. Losing to K-State's crippling.
Well, and what's the other problem for the Big 12 in this whole mediocrity conversation? In the SEC, we're able to say, well, hey, it's Bama. They got a track record. They've been here before. Like in the Big 12, the problem is, and I love Deion and I love Colorado and I love BYU, but you guys don't have track records. And the bigger issue is Tech doesn't have a track record. Okie Light doesn't have a track record. None of these schools
Arizona State.
Like TCU is the only school that's really been able to make any appearance in the college football playoff, obviously.
And then they've fallen off so far
that you feel like it was like, oh, well, hey, maybe that was just a fluke, a one-year thing,
Yeah, I'm shocked. Disbelief is probably too dramatic, but I was stunned that BYU was behind SMU. That this right here, this isn't worth the graphic it's created on. Like it is. BYU is not going to be 12th. It doesn't even. There's so much football to be played. There will be so many shocking losses. I have a hard time. Like I was looking at the matchup last night. I can't see BYU winning in Tempe this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find an avenue for them to win that game, and I can't. I can't see. Like, I think Joey Galloway last night said Indiana should rest its starters and take the L in Columbus. Because if you, and I know that is incredibly controversial because everybody lost their mind. Here's the argument. If you play all your starters and you get that ass whooped, which I think you're going to, how far do you fall? I think there's a chance they're 10, 11, 12.
Yeah, but then on the other side of that, do you really want to send the message you're running from your biggest game on your schedule?
But he's got a sore knee.
Yeah, whatever, dude.
His shoulder.
Whatever,
man, bummer. He's throwing a pass with
soft as hell, dude.
Tossing a ball with his dog in a field, and he just popped his shoulder a little bit. We got to be careful. Simple. It's unfortunate he's going to miss the game. Tell me Joey Galloway's wrong. Is it about getting into the college football playoff? Or is it about going to the lane train school and getting into the getting into the conference championship game? Because I want nothing to do with a conference championship game.
And I would ask the committee, is it about creating the best matchups or playing a narrative? Because if you have a team that runs from the biggest game on their schedule, they have no business being in the college football playoff. None. Absolutely none.
But yet, if Indiana rests its starters and they lose by 50, they'll still be top 12.
It's embarrassing.
I think it makes sense. I want nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the conference championship.
Why are we in college football going to the strategy of we don't want to play in our championship game and we're going to rest our starters in the biggest game of the year? Why are we running? Why are we avoiding hard?
Because we're not avoiding hard. We're trying to make money. And making money means you got to get into the college football playoff.
Yeah.
There's zero again, listen to Lane Kiffin.
I don't know, I guess I would say, it's changed. The conference championship, could have a big impact both ways for people. So I've talked to other coaches, so I'll just kind of give you the feeling from some other coaches that, they don't want to be in it. And, the risk to get a bye, the reward to get a bye versus the risk to get knocked out completely. That's a really big risk.
I want nothing to do with the conference championship game. Hey, congratulations. Go ahead and hang that plaque on your wall, kid. I'm going to the college football playoff.
Into the college football playoff.
Yeah, but the auto bid, and we'll find out this year.
Yeah.
Are you better off with a bye or are you better off just playing through?
I think in the SEC, you're better off with the bye. You've played a tough-ass schedule. You can't tell me your team's not carrying some injuries that maybe the world doesn't know about because you're a football team and you play through stuff. The bye week would be beneficial.
Okay. And this is where I guess we'll part company. I think you're better off playing through and not having to risk losing in the conference championship game. Because Bama and Georgia, if they get in, one of those two will win the college football playoff. Because they are just simply better than everybody else.
Yeah, but they're also inconsistent as hell. Like, we've seen two different versions of both of those teams.
Carson Beck's a problem. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think Alabama's going in the right direction.
Agreed.
I think that Kalen DeBoer, Jalen Milroe is playing the best football I've ever seen him play.
Yeah, I think if you're a Bama fan, DeBoer's just got to get into the playoff, and then you've had it. Year one's been a big success. I think it's been a grinder of a season. The SEC's gotten tougher, not easier. Like it's not been easy. But I don't know, man. Maybe I feel like I'm being difficult by not agreeing with this logic of sitting guys against Ohio State or not wanting to go to your championship game. But I guess I just have an issue with, like, when it comes to football, I have an issue with the concept of, hey, we play what in college football? If you go to the playoff, what are you playing? Probably 16 games, probably, if you go to the national championship game. I have an issue when we start saying things like, man, we're Indiana. We're 10-0. Google me. I just win. We're the best thing ever. We're supposed to be this physical team, but we're going to sit our guys against Ohio State. What are you talking about? Like I'm not here for that kind of logic. I understand what he's saying. I understand the point of, hey, like if you sit them and then you lose by 50, they can't hang it on your head. But if I'm the committee, I'm still hanging it on your head because you were a coward about it. You ran from the hardest game on your schedule. I would rather, honest to God, if I'm Indiana, I would rather say, hey, we put in 110% effort. We played our absolute best game against thee, and we lost by 3 to 7 points.
Yeah.
People would respect you more, and you would get more credit, in my opinion, with the committee if you would take that route.
I think people respect you more when you go to the college football playoff.
Well, you shouldn't go to the college football playoff if you sit your guys in the only game that matters.
But now we're having a conversation about like morals and integrity. That doesn't have any place in sports. Are you kidding me? I think, again, and I just look at this. How dissimilar are these two? Well, let's see. The top 6, 7. The top 7 are identical in the AP in the college football playoff. How on earth do you have Miami 8th? How do you have Miami 8th in front of Ole Miss and Georgia? In front of Tennessee? That I don't understand. I think Miami should be 11th as they are in the AP. And I never thought I would say this. I more align with the AP poll than I do the college football playoff, which is shocking on this show if you've watched this show for any amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
I would have Notre Dame. I would have Notre Dame just in front of Boise State. And I would have Miami probably behind Notre Dame. I don't know what are we looking for? Before I get to the comments section, what are we looking for in the college football playoff?
The best teams playing.
Do we want the 12 best teams?
Yes.
Then Notre Dame.
I do.
Listen, if that's what we want, Notre Dame doesn't belong there. Indiana doesn't belong there. Miami doesn't belong there.
SMU.
Boise doesn't belong there. SMU doesn't belong there. BYU doesn't belong there. A&M doesn't belong there. Like, I think South Carolina is one of the 12 best teams in the country.
What about Colorado?
I think Colorado is one of the 12 best teams in the country. Clemson doesn't belong there. Army doesn't belong there. Tulane doesn't belong there.
Looking at this, who do you like for the best team in the country? You still think it's Oregon?
Alabama. I think Alabama's playing the best football right now.
Yeah.
I think that I'm a big believer that it's all about the trend.
Mm-hmm.
When you lose and how you lose, that's very clearly, is that not the message that the playoff committee sent with this? When you lose and how you lose. I think Alabama is.
Yeah, I mean, there's no better example of it than Miami and Alabama, right? I mean, Miami has a terrible loss to Georgia Tech, where Cam Ward fumbles at the end of the game to cost them the game,
and they're 8th.
But my point is that, like, dudes like Brett McMurphy were all pissed about this. Like, I'm talking about losing his mind on Twitter about the fact that Alabama jumped an idle Miami team. Because like Brett's point was, well, Miami didn't play. They didn't lose.
Doesn't have a win over a ranked opponent.
And the problem is they have a really bad loss. And so to me, like I said earlier, that makes perfect sense to me. And I agree. I would look at, I think your best team in the country conversation right now, based on strength of schedule and how they're playing football. Yeah, Bama's probably the best team in the country on the football field right now.
What are we
playing?
doing?
Like you don't want to see them. And then I think you probably got to look at Georgia because that was a dominant victory.
Defense, Carson Beck is their biggest problem.
100%.
Carson Beck
look at the Texas game. Carson's back in the Texas game.
Yeah.
Awful, just abysmal first half. Terrible.
That win by Alabama against LSU in dominant fashion.
Yeah, got out to an early lead. No problem.
And Brett's point was, how do you jump Bama over Miami after Miami's idle and Bama beat Mercer? Because Miami hasn't played anybody.
Oh, and I know the last time they did play, they
looked
lost to
awful.
A team they shouldn't have lost to, dude, at home.
And Bama beat Georgia. Bama beat Missouri. Bama beat LSU.
Yeah.
And their one loss is to 11th ranked Tennessee. The Vandy loss, bad loss, but look at Vandy. Vandy's 6-4. That's not a horrendous loss.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Vandy and you look at who Vandy's beaten, right? Like their big win obviously is Alabama, but they took Missouri to the limit. Texas was 27-24.
Yeah. See, like that resume clearly paints a picture of a team that's overachieving.
I'm just telling you now, man. It is wild to me.
So again, to me, the college football playoff is supposed to be the 12 best teams in the country. Now, again, just like the MVP conversation in sports, well, what does best mean?
Yes.
Well, best is hard to define, right? I mean, obviously, you got to take into account strength of schedule, got to take into account the conference you play in, got to take into account, and I don't care if anybody's upset about it, what your past 3 seasons have looked like as far as the college football playoff is concerned. Are you someone that's there all the time? Are you someone that's never been there, that's having a great year like BYU or Colorado or SMU or Boise State? Are you only here because the college football playoff expanded? Like, these are all things that I think, human beings inherently take into account. So, sorry, dude, Miami's going to get knocked down the ladder because they weren't even in the conversation of the college football playoff. And it's, what are we working on? 8 years in existence or whatever it's been? Or maybe, no, it's since 2013, I think. So, what is it, like 12 years? Like, Miami's not even been in the conversation. So, they're not going to get the same credit.
I think I think Colorado's the best team in this conference. I know, again, BYU fan, like I kicked your dog.
Yeah, if you lose to ASU, season's over, bro. It's done.
I'm telling you, Colorado's the best team in this conference. And the biggest problem is Colorado's the best team in the conference. The best thing is Colorado's the best team in the conference.
And everybody wants to see Deion Sanders in the CFP.
They're 16th. Even if they win the Big 12. Let's say that, because you look at the games this week. Let's talk about Colorado being 16th.
Yeah.
What is their road? What is their road to passing Boise? They don't have one. They don't have one. And why don't they have one? Because what does this week look like as far as big games? BYU and Arizona State, the Big 12 loses that game.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter who
great
wins.
Way to say it, dude.
Doesn't matter who wins.
Great way.
The Big 12 loses that game. Let's say that Arizona State finds its way to the Big 12 championship. The Big 12 loses that game. That's not a good thing for the Big 12. Army, Notre Dame.
Should be a blowout.
I'm not. I want Notre Dame to win. I'm not. Now we're getting into hyperbole and stuff. Indiana, Ohio State. Big 10 wins either way because I think they're both going. Here's the problem. Miami's playing Wake Forest.
Does Miami beat Wake Forest?
Yes, handily. Ole Miss, Florida. At the Swamp.
See? Like, that's a quality win.
It's a huge game for Ole Miss.
If Ole Miss wins that game, that's a quality win.
SMU at Virginia. You know, the 5-5 Virginia.
Yeah.
SMU should win that game by 37.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, SMU is the best team in the country.
Well, it's Tarrant County.
They should win that game. No, it's Dallas.
Dallas, my bad.
They should win that game by, what, 37? Now I'm being a dick. But you get my point.
Oh, Georgia and Massachusetts.
Yeah, UTEP, Tennessee, Texas, Kentucky, Penn State, Minnesota, Colorado, Kansas at Arrowhead, or excuse me, at GEHA Field at Arrowhead, Clemson and the Citadel. There's very few chances in the top 25 outside of BYU, Arizona State, because one of them's going to lose. There's very few chances. Is Boise going to Laramie to die? No. You're not losing to Wyoming, who's 2-8. Come on. Bama, Oklahoma. That game's in Norman. The big football game, prime time. ABC. Another chance for Alabama to be a top 5 football team. Right? Like, there's not a lot of losses on this schedule.
Well, I think that that's a great point. That's the time of year we're in, right? We're no longer talking about quality wins typically. I mean, there's like 1 or 2 opportunities in the entire slate. We're talking about bad loss season now. Hey, if you lose this game, your season's over. But we would expect you to win it. So that's the type of season we're in. And I think, this is where, again, the CFP and the conjecture that goes into it comes to the forefront, because how do you measure, let's say, what was it? Ole Miss in Florida. I think we said, how do you measure Ole Miss beating Florida at the Swamp versus, another SEC team getting a win, Bama and Oklahoma. I mean,
we're not going to get I don't believe, unless Washington beats Oregon, A&M beats Texas.
Yeah.
Possible, not likely. I don't think we're going to get transformative wins and losses in this thing right here until conference championship week. And I think you're going to see guys just absolutely get the Roto-Rooter in championship week. And I that's why, and I know it sucks, and I'm not trying to be Danny Downer here, but I want nothing to do with a conference championship game. I just want to win out, and dang, we did everything we could do to go to the Dr. Pepper Big 12 championship game. And oh, that's right. Unless you win this conference, you're not getting in.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank. Like, I look at the ACC. If Clemson loses to South Carolina, over. Right? All the ACC honks in the comment section. The ACC is the worst league in the country. The power league in the country of the 4. I think it's the SEC. I think the Big 12 second. I think the Big 10's third. And I think ACC is a distant 4th. But again, I know everybody tells me the Big 10's second. Indiana's not a good football team.
Well, they're obviously
not
looking at Oregon, and Penn.
Penn State's not elite. That's the other one. How is Penn State fourth here? If anybody would like to explain that to me. How is Penn State fourth? I have no idea. How is Penn State fourth?
No idea.
With no huge win. Their best win. Are we really going to make the argument that their best win now is USC?
Well, Monty, they beat Ohio State, right?
No.
Oh, no, they didn't. That's right.
No, they didn't. And Heather Dinich on ESPN, well, the committee gave Penn State credit for a close loss to the number 2 team in the country. It wasn't that close. And so Will Howard with the interception, the pick six, and remember when that was a 21-point swing in that game, that second quarter? That's why Penn State's
Matters
fourth.
how you win a ball game.
Because other than that, I mean, the West Virginia win doesn't look as good as it once we all thought it would. Right? Bowling Green, Kent State, Illinois, UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, Washington, and Purdue. And they've got Minnesota and Maryland left. You're not going to lose. They're not going to lose.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm probably completely wrong.
All right. Let's see what kind of.
Let's get into it. And Donuts, a member for 17 months. CFP committee are stoked about the controversy. I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
I'm sure they are. Their only job is to make sure the SEC and the Big Ten get 8. Because then it's Notre Dame 9. It is the ACC 10. It is the Big 12 11. And then it's Boise, I would think.
Barring the unforeseen.
Boise 12. And then you rank them and top 4 rated conference champions by week. Like, you're going to get 8. That's why I said if I'm Indiana, to your point, I'm Indiana, it's almost inconsequential if they lose to Ohio State. That's what this thing last night told me.
Yeah.
Because if they lose to Ohio State and they do not go to the Big Ten championship, Indiana's in.
But this is the exact flaw of I don't disagree, but this is the flaw of the college football playoff system. How is it that the number 5 team in the country, it has no consequences for losing to the best team on their schedule?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Yeah. And Donuts is right. A conference championship game's a meat grinder. I want nothing to do with it. Nothing at all. Damian Fowler, I think the college football playoff should have their decision made before the conference title games and not punish whoever loses those games. Well,
but what? Why? But again, why would we do that? See, this is my point. We're all trying to run from hard here. We're trying to say, hey, dude, I don't want to play in my conference championship game because the risk versus reward quotient isn't there. Like, getting the bye isn't as rewarding as it needs to be to make playing in the game worth it. And all I'm sitting here saying is, well, it seemed to be pretty worth it for the folks who won their conference championship game, got the bye, and then went on to win a national championship. Notice you don't hear anybody complaining when they win that game. So that's what I'm saying. I don't disagree with Lane Kiffin's logic per se. But what I am saying is that we shouldn't be running from trying to win our conference and trying to run that path.
Salty Virginia Peanuts. So, Monty, the AP poll and college football poll both have Notre Dame at number 6, and you think people just have no idea what they're doing? No, I think Notre Dame's got a paved path.
Yeah.
There's no way, if you've watched a single Notre Dame game this year, you know what that team is. That team is elite on defense and horrendously flawed on offense.
Yep.
I mean, horrendously flawed.
And it's not just a Riley Leonard problem.
I mean, I would love nothing more than to sit here and argue with you that Notre Dame is the best team in the country. Bro, trust me, I would love nothing more than that. They're not one of the 15 best teams in the country.
Notre Dame, our mother.
I'm telling you. They're not the 6th. They're just not.
But again,
I've watched too much of that team and too much of other teams. And when you slam that thing together, Notre Dame shouldn't be in the same conversation with any of the SEC or the elites in the
You're
Big
not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
I think they would beat Penn State, but Penn State isn't one of the top 15 teams in the country.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. But because it's the Big Ten and because it's the SEC and Notre Dame gave up their voting rights.
Yeah.
For the, hey, if we're ranked in the top 12, we're in the college football playoff. So Notre Dame is always going to be ranked in the top 12. Always. That's it. Because they're going to win their conference championship. Oh, wait,
So nobody said people don't know what they're doing. They know exactly.
They know
what
exactly
what
they're
they're
doing.
Yeah,
they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Salty, you're showing your Notre Dame homerism. I don't even know that Salty is a BYU or is a Notre Dame fan. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, there's a clear reason why Notre Dame is there, and it's not because of what they're doing on the football field.
No, it is not.
And then everyone, what I find so rich is that everyone's going to be like, "Oh my God, Notre Dame lost to whatever team in the playoff? Holy cow!" It's like, no, dude, we've been saying this all year. Like, we know who these guys are.
Riley Leonard is only the starting quarterback at Notre Dame because he played well when Duke came to Notre Dame Stadium. That's the only reason that cat. That's it. That is all.
Yeah.
Has he been an elite quarterback? Has he been better than Hartman? Has he been Rick Meyer, Joe Montana? Has he been Rice or any of the other great Notre Dame quarterbacks? Riley Leonard ain't even in the conversation. He just is not. Riley Leonard's a guy who is no different than Lamar Jackson. If I need a quarterback to run me to a championship, sure, I'll take Riley Leonard. If I need a guy to diagnose a defense, stand in the pocket, and deliver the football, nah, I'm good.
Jimmy Clausen.
It was an elite quarterback at Notre Dame.
He ain't Jimmy Clausen.
I'm telling you, that offense is horribly flawed. Why do they not run the ball consistently well? Why do they not throw the ball consistently well? Why do they not do pretty much anything consistently well? Because Riley Leonard's decision-making is not great. And even when he makes a good decision, a lot of times he does not put the ball in the right spot.
Yeah.
And it's Jake Retzloff at BYU, who I think is 3 times better than Riley Leonard. But what is Jake Retzloff's biggest flaw? His receivers drop his passes, and his deep ball is inaccurate. BYU would have won the Kansas game going away if those 2 deep balls that Jake missed in the first half were to the hash instead of the boundary. Put it in the hash, let Darius Lassiter run under it. He put it on the boundary. Win or lose, you lost. I know, throw that ball to the pylon instead of an in route in the end zone where homeboy didn't even have to jump to make an interception. Did you win or did you lose? You lost.
Right.
It's that simple. Why did you lose to NIU? Because Riley Leonard couldn't beat NIU. And he's run very well. I don't even think it's controversial.
It's not.
I really don't.
All, even a little bit.
And their loss is to NIU. Granted, September, you're going to lose in September, and then beat the hell out of everybody's favorite sewing circles because that's what they're doing. Right? It's my Miami argument.
Yeah.
I love Miami. I love the way they play. That's a horrendously flawed football team.
But Cam Ward's entertaining as hell.
And Mario Cristobal's the head coach. And as long as Mario's the head coach, they're probably not going to win big games. And as long as is Cam Ward's ability to throw the ball from one sideline back to the opposite hash is allowed to happen at Miami, they're not going to win big football games.
Yeah. That's
a horribly flawed football team. Notre Dame has that NIU loss. Yes, they do.
And yet they're still sitting there.
Joseph Lindley, Alabama has a terrible loss too. They do. But what's the difference? What is the difference?
They've got get back.
They have get back. B, they've got Jalen Milroe, who, when you look at Jalen Milroe and you look at the losses and you look at Alabama's loss, that loss to Tennessee. Oh, that's right. They were the 11th ranked Tennessee Volunteers. And you look at the way that Alabama has played since that loss, they immediately bounced back and torched Missouri.
Yeah.
Then that win against LSU, and this is the other problem for the Big 12 and the ACC and most of the Big 10. That was a huge crowd. That game, I would remind you, anybody remember where that game was played? Ask Lane Kiffin where that game was
I
played.
was going to say, that's a Lane Kiffin special right there.
Death Valley at night. Alabama went there and won. That's not a good win. That's a huge win.
Yeah.
At LSU on national TV with everybody watching.
Dominant.
Jalen Milroe. Do you guys remember what Jalen Milroe did to LSU? He did them dirty. Well, Monty only threw for 109 yards. Yeah, he also ran for 185 yards and 4 scores. And they dominated LSU. So we can talk about their really bad loss, and I don't even think Alabama has a really bad loss. You don't want to lose to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, but you can write it off. You can say Vanderbilt's having a great year and they're better than they usually are. Okay.
If they had to beat Vanderbilt, they'd be the number 2 team in the country. I think they'd be behind Oregon.
Yeah.
In my opinion. But they didn't, so they're not. And Brett McMurphy and everybody else can get pissed that they jumped over Miami. Miami doesn't have a quality win. And what do we know Miami for this year? Controversial wins, controversial reviews.
Shootouts.
They don't even win convincingly. And they're being taken to the limit by pretty average-ass football teams.
Yeah.
Because that's what the ACC is.
Mostly because they don't play good football. They don't play sound football.
They do not. They do not play sound football.
Yeah.
They don't play fundamental football.
Yeah.
They are a battering ram. Damian Martinez is a battering ram.